Okay, good evening to all of you. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. This is the second webinar that IMT Ghaziabad is conducting for the alumni community of the Institute, and special thanks are due to Dr. Sapna Popli, Dr. Rima Khurana, Nidhi Singh, and the entire team at IMT who have facilitated this event. My name is Professor Alkana, and I'm an adjunct faculty in marketing at IMT along with Professor Jishnu, we will be co-hosting tonight's event. Long before the coronavirus became the crisis that it has, India was going through a deep and broad-based economic slowdown. In the quarter ended March 31st, 2020, economic growth at 3.1% was off from the high of 8.1% recorded in Jan-March 2018. Through this slowdown, millions of jobs were lost, incomes and consequently consumer spending trended downwards, and the outlook turned pessimistic. To take just one simple example, the automobile industry alone lost an estimated 300,000 jobs, representing about 8% of the total industry workforce. The slowdown had cut across sectors, impacting everything from aviation and power to FMCG and services. Experts and commentators on the economy have unanimously added to the slide to firstly the demonetization that led to withdrawal of currency amounting to 86% of all cash in circulation. This hurt, especially because the bulk of India's economy operates in the informal sector. The subsequent implementation of GST created a new level of complexity in an already stressed environment. In this scenario, the coronavirus has brought challenges that are unheard of and for which most of us were unprepared. The lockdown restrictions effectively paused life as we knew it. From March 24th till at least a few weeks ago, most of India was compelled to stay at home, which is where we all are today. Though work from home has become a buzzword, many sectors like entertainment, sports, tourism, restaurants, hotels and hospitality all effectively were in freeze frame. The consequent unemployment further shrank consumer spending. What is of real significance, however, is the shifts in consumer behavior around which many companies and brands have been maneuvering to stay ahead of the game. How consumers have changed and what companies have done to grow and prosper in abnormal times is the subject of today's webinar. I will now invite my co-host, Professor Jishnu, to introduce our esteemed panelists and begin the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Alkana, and welcome to everyone. More people, I'm sure, will be joining in. So we are really happy here today to take this topic up because I think it's a hot topic for all of us. Many industries are struggling, trying to figure out what to do in this crisis. And some of them are actually doing very well. So we wanted to showcase stories of industries or companies that have done well in spite of all the problems that the entire economy is facing. And to help us to do that, we have three esteemed guests with us, and it is my pleasure to welcome them here. So, firstly, Sarang Panchal. Sarang is like a veteran of the market research industry in India. He's currently the managing director of MRSS, which is India's only public limited market research company. Sarang started his career more than 30 years ago in the client side when he joined Procter & Gamble. From there, he moved into the market research industry through an agency called the MRAS, where he eventually became a partner and the executive director when the firm was acquired by Dun & Bradstreet. Since then, he's had a number of roles in the industry, including being the managing director of Nielsen Asia Pacific, looking after 17 countries for their customized division. Sarang has an encyclopedic knowledge of the Indian industry, and I'm sure he'll add a lot of value to our discussion here today. So welcome, Sarang. Look forward to hearing your views. Our second guest is Ujjawal Galada from Emamai. Ujjawal is currently a general manager there, and he also heads the modern trade function. He is a graduate from IIM Bangalore with more than 16 years of experience across multiple companies. He's worked earlier in Colgate and GSK, as well as in Kellogg's. In addition to working in multiple companies, Ujjawal has multifunction experience. He's worked across marketing, across sales, in shopper behavior. So he brings a lot of well-known experience and exposure that adds value. Plus, he is in a very exciting space in Emamai today, as you see. We move forward into this discussion because they have done a lot of very interesting work in terms of tackling the entire COVID situation. And so welcome, Ujjawal, and we look forward to hearing the things that you have done in this situation. Yeah.
Thanks, Jishnu.
Thanks. And finally, we have Samantha Ganguly. He is the executive director at Lowe Lintas Group. Sumanta has been a key part of the digital industry in India over the last 20, 30 years. As the industry has grown, Sumanta has contributed strongly to it, including things like digital launches of some huge brands, including things like gamified apps, including things like sports platforms. Sumanta is a firm believer in customer experience and that it is the foundation for getting success in business. He also, like Alkana and me, he also straddles two worlds. I mean, in addition to industry, he's also a part academic. He teaches as a guest faculty in IIM Indore and MET, and he has been a speaker in AdTech as well as AMAS. Welcome, Sumanta. We really look forward to your views as well.
Thanks, Jishnu.
Thanks. So to kick off the discussion, and as Professor Alkana spoke about it earlier, I'd like to invite Sarang, and then once Sarang starts talking, I would encourage everyone else to jump in with their points of view as to what do you think has been the impact of the lockdown so far on India as an economy or on certain sectors. So Sarang, if you can start off, and then I'd request probably Sumanta to come in, and then maybe Ujjawal. But Sarang, over to you.
Thanks, Jishnu. So I think I'm going to just talk about some of the sectors which have done well despite the pandemic or because of the pandemic. I think the ones that have not done well are easy to talk about, as Alkana mentioned automobiles, etc. I mean, the entire laundry list of luxury, travel, reality, so on and so forth. There's no point visiting that list because, anecdotally we know that we don't need to do any research on that. But it's important to look at the categories that have done well, both in India as well as globally. Paper, sanitizers, hand wash, disinfectants. Again, no prizes for guessing this. Funnily enough, Ayurvedic medicines, juices, coconut water, honey, vitamins, hair dryers, curlers, body grooming kits. Now we're getting into slightly different set of products: trimmers, men shavers. Then, of course, you have things like vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, washing machines, dishwashers. So what's happened is they may be slightly more expensive products, but because people were pushed to the brink, they had no choice. Okay. Then, of course, things like mobile wallets, online education, OTT streaming platforms, health services. We're going to talk much more on that later. Then, of course, the regular FMCG stuff like tea, coffee, packaged goods, biscuits, wafers. So all these have actually done frightfully well, and many of them have done well because of the pandemic. But I think the important thing to realize is, while it's obvious that they did well, I would say hands off and kudos to the people in manufacturing and marketing of these products, because they really managed to, despite the lockdown and all the other constraints, do a really cutting-edge job. And I'm not talking about India alone; it's everywhere. And I'm not talking about packaged goods alone. It could be even services like Zoom and Google Meet and all of them, which had suddenly a huge surge in a huge growth, and they've kind of managed to weather the tide and do a reasonably good job. I know, do you want to add something to this, Sumanta?
Sumanta, you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. No, actually, I wanted to pick a different aspect of what is being noticed during this lockdown. See, going into lockdown, I know a lot of the brands, we were all focused on top of the funnel work, right? Which is essentially what we in advertising call the triggers, right? And at the subject that I am most passionate about, which is this whole customer experience, managing the entire customer journey. I think that's kind of come into the focus post-lockdown. It's like a shift that has happened where brands and businesses have understood that it's not enough just to look at top of the funnel. They're far more consciously looking at the entire mid funnel and the end funnel. And I'm sure Sarang, Ujjawal will also add to that. That entire subject of what we call the whole customer touch points, customer experience, which was the entire mid funnel, has really suddenly been accelerated in terms of growth. Every brand, every business, what we start noticing now is passionately looking at not just the triggers in terms of the top funnel, how do I reach the customer, but a lot of focus has come in. It was already coming in the last 2 years. Now today, post lockdown, a big shift I find where brands are really looking, at that mid funnel opportunities, at fulfilling those opportunities, looking at different touch points, increasing the number of touch points to give a better experience. I think that's a big shift from a marketing mindset point of view. Yes, we are all aware of the numbers. Yes, we know that some industries are doing better, some are doing worse. But overall, if I were to look at it, that to me, that what I used to call the messy middle, has suddenly come into. Sorry, Ujjwal, you could add on this as well.
Yes, I think it's been inflection point of either categories collapsing, like beauty, like cosmetics, like skin, because people are not going out. People sport a lipstick, for example, right? And since you're not going out, you don't have pollution, you don't need a face wash. So I think certain categories actually collapsed, but certain categories simply it was an inflection point. The entire health and wellness place was always looking like, okay, it is going to be interesting, attractive, but it never became a mainstay. So even now, Ayurvedic products is just 4% of FMCG business. But that is going through a boom because people are suddenly saying, I want to boost my immunity. I believe in Ayurveda. You had someone like Narendra Modi tweeting about why you should use Chavanprash, right? And that triggering how you should use a kadha, right? The goodness of haldi. And you had Prime Minister talking about these things and tweeting about it. I think that triggered a huge thing on immunity. Suddenly, Ayush Ministry became a household name. Right, and I think so. Ayush Ayurveda, I think the entire health and wellness place is going through a simple, a skyrocketing, so to speak, a trigger, and it's going superbly well. Other is going to be the germ phobia, the virus phobia. The sanitizers we are aware. We are actually seeing trading up. People are moving away from the cheaper beauty soaps to more expensive germ-killing soaps. People are using hand wash. Hand wash category has doubled in just during the pandemic. It continues to grow well, right? So I think it is the germs. And if you look at food is actually trading up. All of us are cooking at home. We are no more going out. So we still want to eat the lasagna. We want to eat the pizza. So hence cheese consumption is suddenly going through the roof. You were earlier, the caterer outside or the restaurant was probably cooking in a normal oil. Suddenly, you're cooking on Saffola, you're cooking on the more olive oil. So the huge trade up is happening on food. So I think breakfast cereals, be it baking goods, be it cooking oils, or cheese, dairy products. I think there is a huge boom there because people are bringing outside in. So what I could consume outside, I'm consuming at home. I'm making it at home. So I think there are. So I think it's more than crisis. I think there are a lot of opportunities, and it's all it depends on the entrepreneur to pick up those opportunities and leverage them.
Thank you, Ujjwal, and that brings me to something very interesting. Like Ujjwal said, the smart entrepreneurs are able to capitalize on a crisis and make it into an opportunity. And Ujjwal, you had a very nice case about Navratan, which has taken a crisis and actually turned it around. So maybe you could talk about that. And Professor Alkana, if you can just share his slides, he can take us through the story of what happened on Navratan.
Yeah, so Navratna, I think, is a 40-year-old brand. If you could go to the previous slide, Alkana sir. If you go to the previous slide. One more. So hair oiling. If you could, next slide. So hair oil is a very highly penetrated category. If you can see the middle middle chart, it's talking about penetration of hair oils. Hair oils is a highly penetrated category. 57% of households use it, and you see the consumption, the penetration actually increasing pre-lockdown. So March is the first stack. Then you see post that suddenly the penetration collapsing, right? From 51% going to a 35% level, it's collapsed. It's a category which is a 10,000 crore category. When it's collapsing at these levels, it is quite dramatic. So what was happening is daily essentials like hair oils, grooming aids, deodorants were suddenly become discretionary, right? It's not a necessity. I will use it when I want. So discretion, so people were cutting down immediately. So you can see the immediate impact from March to April. You can see such huge impact, be it hair color, be it talcum powders, be it hair oils. Now Navratna is one of the biggest, one of the leading brands in the hair oil category. Would have like a 10 share in that category, in the hair oil category. And you look at it, these were at risk. These were at risk in the sense, if you can go to the next slide, sir. These are at risk, and Emamai's business significantly is hair oils, deodorants, and face care, and those are at risk. They are collapsing. Some categories are collapsing as high as 70%. So in that sense, it was about survival for Emamai, right? And if you go to the next slide, sir, see, crisis is a very interesting in Chinese. Crisis has if you spell that, it has got two characters. The first character represents danger. The second one means opportunity. I think this is the essence of the case I'm going to talk about. It was about it's devastation, right? The first quarter, April, May, June, was a devastation. It was like survival. So if you can look at from a step by step, 15th March, we stopped media. We realized that, hey, lockdowns are coming even before the lockdowns were announced. So we stopped all our media. Navratna is a 600 crore brand with a 100 crore marketing budget. We stopped all media on 15th March. We knew that something it's going to be like a demonetization is what we thought initially, 10-15 days of disruption. Then we realized, hey, our products are not available with this entire disruption and distribution was happening. There were no distributors to sell the products to the retailers. Consumption was happening. So what we did is we rolled out to 250 odd vans across the country to just directly distribute our products to retailers, right? There was no distribution, completely collapsed. We did that. Then we started media. Navratna is a seasonal product. It sells well in March, April, May, because it is a product which is meant for, which gives relief from heat to the common man, right? Now, and when the first lockdown was announced, unlock was announced, we started media in full hog. We had a new Salman Khan campaign. And what we also realized is people were not watching television. People were spending time because you had old reruns. There were no anything new on television. So TikTok was something where people were spending. We do this new ad, but still our business was tanking. And June comes rain, and that's end of season for Navratna. Right? It's gone. So 60% of the business actually happens during this period, and it's completely gone. What could you do? Or you can say, hey, it's a crisis, or can you convert this into an opportunity? Navratna stands for many things, but the core benefit is heat relief and also stress. A lot of us go to a barber, a salon to get a chumpy, right? To release our stress. We picked that up. We said, hey, the common man is under stress. He is worried about his jobs. He's worried about his own livelihoods, about its lives and livelihoods, right? Both are a challenge, right? So we said, how do we use this as a stress? Anti-stress campaign was what we brought back in August. We did some influencer marketing saying chumpy at home. You do a chumpy outside. You go to a salon to get your chumpy. We said we created entire influencer marketing on chumpy at home. And believe it or not, a category, a brand was tanking is now reviving and actually growing. So that's how an entrepreneurial mindset can convert a challenge, a crisis into an opportunity. I would just like to show and add on this, just to tell you how we have changed our positioning. About relief from heat, but we moved out. We said, hey, August, it's no more heat. It's all monsoon. We turned it around to tension reliever. I would like to show you that ad. So this was the convention. This was the Salman Khan ad we had. We played it for 2 months, but it's no more relevant because it was talking about heat relief. We completely moved to a new campaign quickly, sensing that stress is a big challenge right now with people. We moved to a completely new ad, no celebrity, and turning around the business. Why don't you have a look at that?
महामारी के चलते लोगों में बढ़ा डर। ये सुनते ही टेंशन बढ़ जाती है। क्या करें? आंखें बंद कर लो। इन्हें चाहिए नवरत्न की चंपू। नवरत्न तेल में है अश्वगंधा।
The video was not working, only the audio was working.
महामारी के चलते लोगों में बढ़ा डर। ये सुनते ही टेंशन बढ़ जाती है। क्या करें? आंखें बंद कर लो। इन्हें चाहिए नवरत्न की चंपू। नवरत्न तेल में है अश्वगंधा और ब्राह्मी जैसी आयुर्वेदिक जड़ी बूटियां। इसकी चंपी दे सिर दर्द और तनाव से आराम। तुम्हारी चंपी में जादू है। नवरत्न से सिर दर्द तनाव जाओ भूल, रहो ठंडा ठंडा कूल कूल।
So the entire Chumpy has moved in-house, right? It wasn't talking about, so we said people are not going out, not going to salons, and stress, very pertinent. We created that. And now we're making this product an all-season product because stress is not just related to summer, it's round. And as we're saying, slowdown and other economic challenges are there. So stress and this campaign has just turned around our business.
So thank you very much, Ujjawal. And I identify with this because I've been in companies where we had seasonal products. Shower to shower, for example, in Johnson & Johnson. If you don't sell in these 3 months, the year is gone. We give up and we wait for the next year. And I think I really admire the spirit that you guys have shown, because even after the season was over, you were able to find that insight and find something in the product that connected to the insight. And now I think what you've done will help you in the long term. Because suddenly from even your Salesforce mindset, Navratna is no longer a 3-month product. Now it is a year-round product because stress is there throughout the year. So it's actually a foundation for a long-term growth. So it's, I think, a really, really good case study. Sumanta, you have also had some interesting work that you wanted to share. So maybe you can talk about that. You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah. No, actually, yeah, that's a perfect slide. I think one of the other things I wanted to talk about is how brands are, I think with this lockdown, one of the interesting pieces that I started noticing, both globally as well as in India, brands started to realize their place in society. By that, I mean, they started realizing that businesses have a role to play in society. Sometimes we forget that when it comes to brand or when it comes to businesses, it's only the motive is only profit. Yes, it is an important reason for businesses to stay, to be around. But more than that, they're also part of society and they need to take some roles and responsibilities. So when the lockdown happened, a lot of the companies, and there might be bad executions, good executions, they came out to support the government efforts. They came out in support with aid. They came out with PPE kits. They came out with messaging, etc., etc., etc. We have many examples of those. which is really what started at the start of lockdown. But I think towards the end, and this is a statement from Mark Pritchard, many of us would have seen when he made this big statement of stepping up as a PNG, stepping up as a force for good during one that happened this year, again, gone from home of sorts, where he actually goes out and states that the role of business in society has been forever disrupted. It is now clear that we have a responsibility to reinvent ourselves, from brands and companies that think about themselves to brands and companies that step up both as a force for growth and a force for good. And I think that is going to stay. Brands were always living on quarter to quarter. A lot of that is actually shifting, and very interesting models are coming about. If you look at the whole model of platform co-op, which didn't exist, it existed in small experiments somewhere in the US. I see a lot of those kind of innovative sort of brand collaborations coming into play in this future, right? I'll talk about another one. We would have all seen it at the start of the lockdown, at the start of the pandemic. In the US, what we saw, again, brands coming together, Coca-Cola, Unilever, coming together and going against Facebook, pulling out their entire advertising dollars from Facebook as a mark of protest because of the whole fake news and the misinformation. It actually set Facebook back. While the numbers, they are down by certain percentage points in terms of revenue, and it might not affect Facebook in the long run because I think the advertisers are back again. But it makes a point that, as a brand, I'm also a part of society, and I'm also here to make a statement or make an act. So if we go to the next one, actually, I wanted to make that distinction of how this has changed. So this was a communication, again, put out at the start of the lockdown by a brand, Castrol. Play the ad.
रुक मत चल तू रुक मत
मैं जरूरतमंद परिवारों के लिए फंड्स इकट्ठा कर रहा हूँ.
I'm conducting online sessions to help people cope with anxiety.
I'm helping deliver essential groceries to the elderly in my locality.
मैंने डॉक्टर्स और नर्सेस के लिए इन्फेक्शन फ्री टैब इन्वेंट किया है.
चलो बनाए अपना कल.
And now if you go to the next one, so this is what started it off, right? It's just communication, asking people, sending out information or celebrating heroes. That's what it started out with. And if you go to the next one, which is where the platform co-op model, and something that I'm very proud of having done, brands actually have no business benefits. Yeah, this one. Let's see the ad and then I'll talk about it.
इस बार स्टोव राशन वगैरह सब साथ लेकर जा रहे हैं वापस शहर. पता नहीं ना काम के लिए कितना भटकना पड़े. आप ऐसे ही खाली हाथ.
मैं सबसे जरूरी चीज लेकर जा रहा हूँ, काम.
हाथ में काम लेकर, आत्म सम्मान लेकर काम वापसी होगी.
कामवापसी.com पर आपके कौशल अनुसार कई शहरों में काम मिल रहा है. बस 1800202448 पे मिस कॉल लगाइए और यहीं से काम लेकर शहर जाइए,
क्योंकि काम है तो जहान.
कामवापसी.com.
So what started out as just communication, and if you notice in size of work, you see 5 brands have come together, right? Now an Axis Bank or a Airtel 4G or a ZTV, Radio City, Razorpod, Lowe, Lintas, we are all separate brands. We have different kinds of businesses that we are engaged in. But it started with a simple thought that there is in society, there is the problem of migrant workers, which we need to address. And all of these brands came together and just fought trying to do something good, an act. They put out an act out there, and Kamvapasi, by the way, is live. There are 100,000 plus workers registered. Last I checked, there were job matches which were happening. It was just a slight bit of tech coming in the middle. to change that experience. See, otherwise, so migrant workers, when they return, how do they now start coming back? Because the mode of migration or this whole mandis where they would have these contractors, they are all disappeared. Even the contractor did not know how to find that migrant worker anymore, or whether the migrant worker is even ready to come back to work. So we were talking to businesses and a lot of corporate houses, etc. And then we realized, a little bit of tech could actually change this, which is cut out the middlemen, get these businesses to directly employ the migrant worker, stop the labor contractor in the middle. Now, if you see, this is how 5 brands have come together and said, we'll do this act. Doesn't matter. We'll bring in our services, we'll put in money behind this. And in the long run, because this is good for society, it brings back consumption, it brings back demand in the market. It's not this quarter, next quarter, but in the long run, in the next 1 year, this will have an impact on society, and it's a good thing to do. As long as we can make that impact, let's create this app. We all spent sleepless nights getting this going and running, but I'm saying that is here to stay. These models are here to stay. Businesses coming together for doing, like Mark Pritchard mentioned, for growth and for good. It's not enough just for growth anymore. You have to look at both. You have to look at your place in society and your balance sheet and your P&Ls. Both are important. I see that is really where brands have changed.
That's, I think, fantastic and very inspirational, I would say, and I think it's part of a global movement. I remember last year, the CEO circle had met together and, said business is not just about shareholders, it's also about society. And it's great that we are seeing a similar trend in India. It's great that brands are looking at the long term and not necessarily at sales for the next quarter. So fantastic initiative. And I think, Sarang, you have a few examples of other brands in the beauty space probably, which are doing similar things. So if you could talk about that.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's a little different globally. When I say globally, I'm talking about the UK, Europe, and the US. I just decided, just for argument's sake, when I started looking at everything, I said, let me just look at one vertical. Let me look at beauty. And, I had pages and pages of examples of exactly the kind of stuff Sumanta was talking about. So, for instance, L'Oreal, the group has donated 300,000 hand sanitizers to the frontline retail staff in the UK, 10,000 examination gloves to the London Ambulance Service. Avon has announced a $1 million commitment to frontline staff. Victoria Beckham has said that she'll give 20% of sales to two not-for-profit organizations. Even Dyson has said that they've actually collaborated with TTP to create a new ventilator. The list actually ranges from the large companies to the mid-sized companies to the boutique companies. And it's amazing, that it's there not only in the UK, but also, like I said, in other parts of the West. Unfortunately, I don't see that level of a concerted effort within each vertical. Although, as Sumanta said, there are examples. I know the Mahindra Group has done some work. The Ambanis have done some work. But I think here you can see that the entire vertical has sat down together and said, we need to give back. And I think it starts with the biggest and the best. When they say that, okay, it's not about short-term profits alone, and people are going to remember who helped them at this point in time, especially the people who are upfront and risking their lives and the livelihood of people dependent on them. So I think it's a very powerful thing that they're doing, and it will pay off in the long run for sure. The other thing I just wanted to talk about is, while we spoke of a lot of stuff that Emamai did, I just want to explain one thing, because, before we move on to more esoteric stuff, is that if you look at what's happened over the last 6 months across the world, it is basically a question of getting back to basics. If you look at a hierarchy of needs, we've suddenly gone into things like personal safety, personal health, health of the family, security from a financial point of view, things like food and medicine. So whenever global research is done, those are the things that actually came up, right up front. And obviously everything else didn't matter, like, personal accomplishments and job satisfaction and entertainment and stuff like that. Obviously, people just didn't think about it. So it's really been back to basics. And I think it's going to last for a bit till we know for a fact that there is a way forward. I think another thing which I've of late seen from a lot of surveys which have been done, in fact, there's one which came on my desk just today morning, which is a little scary because it suggests that in India, 9 out of 10 consumers are very cautious about their spendings going forward. And this was a study done in, I think, 12 countries globally by Standard Chartered. So the scary part I'd like to share with everyone on this call is that India is much more conservative, much more pessimistic as compared to the others. In fact, the global average is probably 75%. And I think that's, partly it's being realistic because, September, October, and the next few months are not going to be that great. The economy was not, as I think Alkana mentioned, we were not doing that well in the first place. So there is some logic behind this, very negative view. But the fact is that as we just saw really great examples from what Ujjawal presented, even in this very, very negative backdrop, there is stuff we can do by being very quick, very alert. And like I touched upon earlier, the one thing that everyone has done really, really well is very high quality execution. And I think hats off to everyone who's done that, because that is going to help us overcome some of the pain over the next few months. That's what I want to add on.
So I think we've seen a lot of shifts in consumer behavior as well. And obviously some categories have taken preeminence over others. In fact, it's interesting the way Sarang put it. It's almost like saying that we're back to the bottom of the Maslowian hierarchy. And we're basically operating at a very basic level, trying to get our basic safety and our food needs in place. So I just thought it might be a good point in the discussion to look at what have been some of the major shifts in consumer behavior. And Ujjawal, I thought you might be the right person to give us a perspective on what kind of shifts have taken place and how Emamai has stepped in to address these changes in consumer behavior.
Last 2 years of 2018-19, the boardroom discussions have been around e-commerce brands, have been around premiumization, niches, but premiumization and selling them directly to consumer. So we are kind of exhausted. What else are the growth opportunities? We were looking, even the large companies were looking at niches, saying, okay, we'll launch an e-commerce only brand. It will be a 5 crore brand, a 10 crore brand, and going after that. And as Sarang said, I think, or as Alkana sir said, I think suddenly the base has shifted to basic needs. And hence huge opportunities. The entire virus phobia, so to speak, or the protection that it's triggering huge opportunities for us. Alkana sir, if you could move to the following slides. So I think look at the entire personal hygiene space. The personal hygiene space is exploding. As I said, people are now using soap, sanitizer, hand washes. I think the penetrations of hand washes has actually doubled in just 3 months. Sanitizer, the penetration was probably just 1%, and suddenly it's moved to for 35%. So that's a dramatic shift, right? And these are throwing up so many opportunities for companies which are agile. So, for example, if you can go to a few more slides from now, Alkana sir, I'll just talk about the Border Plus example. So I think we'll come to the BorderPlus example in a moment, but I think before that, I think the changes also happening in consumer behaviors. So talking about BorderPlus is an antiseptic cream. It's a 40-year-old brand, one of the most trusted brands, and always been a antiseptic cream which you would use to in the winters to heal your chapped lips and dry and fight dryness, right? From there, we said, hey, we have a brand which is #1 antiseptic cream. It's the world's #1 actually. And we said, how do we, it stands for two things. I think it's very important when people have taken agility and done a lot of lateral thinking and expanded on new opportunities. It's very important to be right on the brand architecture. This brand was talking about moisturization and germ kill. Right. We said, hey, this is the best brand to extend into newer categories like soaps, hand wash, sanitizers. You know, many brands, there are 130 launches of sanitizer in the organized market in the last few months. Right. We were one of them. But we clicked and we have already 5% market share, and it's very big for a category for a new brand to get 5% market share in just 3 months' time. And the reason was this was on the equity, this was on the brand architecture, right? Hence, we moved into this. There are a lot of big companies have gone into hair care brands have been extended to sanitizer, and it's very important to understand is looking at agility. We are looking at opportunities. It's very important that it is on the brand equity. You cannot stretch. The consumer cannot suddenly think a hair care brand can get into a sanitizer. He might see it, he may not buy it, right? So that's the story on BorderPlus. And a 5% market share, I think, is quite an astonishing. In this 3 months' time, you're reaching that, and now we're getting hand washes as we see. Other thing I think talking about was yes, Alkana sir, over to you.
So I'll just, I want to go back to Sumanta at this point of time and ask him to give us a sense of, what have been the implications in terms of this whole virtual world and how the online medium has assumed greater importance compared to much earlier. So we had some material which we wanted to share with you.
Yeah. So I'm sure Sarang can add a lot about how the consumer is spending more and more time online. And I think pretty much we are all well adjusted to this whole work from home, right? We are all staring at our screen.
No, we're not. I disagree entirely. We have no choice. We're being forced.
No choice. Yeah, we are forced to. No, so some of the interesting things that I started picking out, and we have sort of acted on some of those actually quite early on. I'll come to the shopping part, but I think the whole piece about this whole virtual has now become the go-to, right? Which is where this was a very interesting piece of data that I picked out, where if you look at in India, 46% of the interactions, internet users who have a daily AI-enabled interaction in India was 46% in 2018, projected to grow to about 55% in 2020. My sense is it will actually shoot to about 70% in 2021. Because today, interacting with a human being is as good as interacting with an iPod, right? From banking to your insurance companies to multiple other categories. I think people have implemented different sorts of AI technologies where virtual interactions can happen. And we don't even bother much, right? I mean, the first level of interaction, even if you're on an Amazon or even if you're on Zomato or any of these platforms, the first level of interaction, you pretty much know it's a bot, but you don't mind because the bot kind of solves that purpose for you. Earlier there were these people would say, hey, you know what, I don't like talking to an automated voice. But today with virtual interactions, what we notice is customers actually prefer it. It's moved from early days of I don't want to talk to an automated voice. I want to talk to a real human being. But the bots and the AI technology has become so efficient. Customers have pretty much want the first level of interaction with an AI. They don't really want a human being at the end of it because AI gives you their ability to respond faster has been well noted. The other interesting piece that we picked out, and if you go to the next slide, I think I'll talk a little bit about, and these are some new areas of technology that adoption that we are seeing. Of course, more time spent on mobile phones, more time spent on, we are seeing possibly a largest segment of digital first audiences landing during the pandemic. But if you were to go to the next slide, one of the other areas that's picking up a massive speed during this lockdown is really voice, right? And again, the whole genre of voice-based interactions. If you look at voice-based interactions, which is using Google Assistant or an Alexa or any of these, and today pretty much every phone has Google Assistant. Now, voice-based interactions, what it does is it kind of gets a very disparate segment of audience which was never there online, right? Or it was not even there in our sort of media availability, right? What I call them the type challenged, right? If you look at the India situation in the context of India, how many people could actually read, write, and type on these small phones? It's absolutely now it has gotten almost a whole new segment of audiences because of this lockdown and pandemic. And you're seeing some of the launches from Google, right? The whole Google Polo, what they launched for assisted reading facility for kids, to voice search in Hindi and vernacular languages, right? Some of those initiatives that Google sort of came out with earlier last year, what I call they did not, nobody knew that there was a pandemic coming. But the moment this pandemic happened and the moment this lockdown happened, you suddenly saw a surge. You suddenly saw a surge on voice. You suddenly saw a surge on interactions and more companies saying, hey, you know what? I can't have so many people in the call center anymore. Can I not have a bot? It's far simpler, far more efficient, far more drives the right kind of responses. And this is one small example. We built something out at the start of this year. Neither of us knew there was going to be a pandemic for this new car from Tata Motors. It's the Tata Altroz, where we built out a voice-based interaction and on Google Assistant. If you go to the next slide, we can see the video, skip the video, but the data is quite heartening to see. Even during lockdown, while car sales were down to zero, there were people coming in and asking queries to the bot. There were people coming in and asking about 8 questions per interaction. About 1,340 hours of engagement with the brand. 16% of them repeats, which means, I've asked 3 questions, hey, you know what, but I do want to check out this feature of the car. Does the car have it? And that ability, today technology allows us to deliver, right? And we'll see more of these kind of examples. And I'm happy to say, and some of you would have already noticed some of the press releases are coming out where Maruti and even Tata Motors has gone out on record and said that, hey, you know what, we are coming back to pre-COVID sales. I mean, not like pre-COVID sales in the auto industry was any great coming into 2019 or 2020, the end of 2019, 2020. But it is the sign that, and it is a sign that clearly these technologies are going to be implemented more and more as brands adopt what I call, again, the mid-funnel. They're all looking at the mid-funnel journey. Earlier it was, let's do an ad. Rest of it, let's look at shopper marketing, or let's look at how do we sort of ensure that the customer walks in. Today, everybody's, put that whole messy middle in focus and said, it's not enough to do that ad. I also need to see how do I convert that ad? How do I bring them into the funnel? Is it a bot? Is it an app? How do I sort of navigate that? That's becoming far more important for companies. So this was and we could just play the video. It'll give you a sense of how this works. This was done with an influencer, a bunch of influencers who sort of were given the bot.
What if I told you there's a car?
Sorry, I think there's some video is not moving. Yeah. I think there's some concern. I think we could skip it.
A car that talks to you and tells you everything.
Yeah, we could skip that. I think it makes sense. So that is something that I sort of felt that from a customer experience point of view, a lot more will come in as more and more consumers and users sort of not only start their journey online, also end the transaction on digital. So you will see a lot more adoption of technology by brands and businesses to solve for this entire mid-funnel and end-funnel journeys. That's really my perspective on
So
it.
Sumanta, is it fair to say then that there's a significant shift taking place in the industry from the traditional medium of communication, which used to be TV, print, outdoor, and so on? And there was a time when the digital piece was something we did additional to the main campaign. The way it's looking now is the main campaign is the digital piece, and everything else probably revolves around it. And this is the focal or the center
Absolutely.
of all the communication.
Absolutely. So from a communication point of view, like I said, it depends from category to category. Some brands, some businesses, it will TV and print, and I don't know so much of outdoor, but TV and print will still be relevant. But you will see a larger shift coming in with digital advertising because as we are spending more time on our screens, etc. So what I definitely see is the mid-funnel, where a lot of this effort would be about, hey, you know what, let's put this on our call center. When we get the calls, let's just have the call center manage it. Oh, we have a website now. It's fine. It's only for lead management. I see a lot of focus will come in that mid-funnel area. How do I get people to come in and remember me? When they land on my website, what's the kind of experience that I'm talking about? What kind of interactions do I want? What is going to be my first round of interaction back with them? How do I bring them back into my brand funnel, even if they have dropped out? Those are becoming far more important conversations. And what's happening is a lot of brands are shifting their budgets from the top of the funnel to this whole mid funnel, because they've realized that if I can get 500,000 leads, it's okay. But even if I get the 50 solid leads, I need to nurture them well enough. And that's coming into, and with digital, and because more and more transactions are starting and ending in digital, it becomes easier for brands to sort of have that track. So therefore, it's now I see a lot of mid-funnel work, definitely a shift in budgets from TV or print, which was already there. It's just accelerated tremendously into digital now, possibly doing maybe about 30, 35, 40% of the budgetary spends. And my sense is a lot of this, again, revolves around digital first. So you can't say who's a digital consumer anymore. Every user today is a digital customer first. That's it. I mean, so there is no digital and traditional. There is only one customer type who's online. I mean, there is no other type of customer.
In fact, I have some interesting thing to share, if I may, at this point.
Yeah, sure, sir.
I just want to share a few statistics with you guys. Maybe interesting. So in Q2 of this year, in the entire world, there were 35 billion new apps downloaded by consumers. Okay? And Google Play downloads grew 10% year over year to 25 billion, whereas iOS downloads grew 20% year over year to nearly 10 billion. Okay, so look at the numbers. Now, the important thing here is, what are people downloading? So I think I'm looking at the non-gaming. Okay, forget the gaming bit. That's a totally different audience and totally different purpose. So I think there's a very high growth quarter on quarter posted among manufacturers of business apps. All right. And that growth is 115% quarter on quarter. That includes, I guess, all your conferencing apps, etc., etc. The next one is health and fitness, which is posted a 75% quarter on quarter growth. And again, that's relevant because everyone's concerned with, health and exercise, and people know that there's no other way to hold your own and build immunity and stay kind of put besides doing that. So that was 75% quarter on quarter, and education is shown a 50% growth quarter on quarter. And I think the other interesting thing, I should have given you a slide, is that the average number of monthly hours spent on non-gaming apps is the highest in India, and I'm talking very recent figures, Q2 of this year. In fact, it's probably the highest in India, followed by Brazil. But India is double that of Brazil. So obviously, Indians are spending a lot of time, and the reason I jumped in is because you questioned Sumanta as to is this likely to become mainstream? It might be, at least for a while. It's suddenly going to become mainstream, and I can empathize with everything that Sumanta has said. I'm sure his clients are looking forward to him adding value in terms of creative ways of making that a mainstream, almost like in the old days we used to call a thematic kind of communication via.
Yeah. So let's this was something which I think Sarang, you had stumbled upon.
Oh yeah, this is very interesting.
It's a good story.
It's actually an example from New Zealand where they got this. They actually got this some time back. This store in a place called Taupa, Taupa, and I guess it's been around for a bit, but it's suddenly been in the news this year because people can't fly around. And as you can see, it's a great thing to take the family, and you get the feeling that you're actually traveling, but you're not. So it's all about thinking different, and I think both my panelist colleagues have talked about it a couple of times. That it's all about thinking a little differently, being totally consumer focused, and being operationally absolutely brilliant, keeping in mind all the digital initiatives we have in mind. Of course, here it's not digital, it's just being totally creative. But with the help of digital and other backdrops we have with us, really the sky is the limit. So I'm personally very, very bullish on what marketers and business people, especially the people who are very, very, very quick in terms of taking action, can do in this pandemic.
So if I can add to that, Sarang, looking at the aircraft here, there's an article in the paper, I think just a few days ago, the airline industry is practically dead, right? But Qantas has introduced flights to nowhere. So people have been missing flights. So these flights are basically joyrides. You sit in the plane, you fly X number of kilometers around Australia, and they go over the Uluru Rock, they go over the Great Barrier Reef, and then you come back to your original starting point, which may be Sydney or it may be Melbourne, and they're earning good money because those flights are packed. People are so sick and tired of sitting at home. They get the flight experience, they get a tour of Australia. So like you said, Sarang, and like Ujjawal was saying, creativity, I think, comes to the fore in tough situations. And Qantas, the amazing thing about Qantas doing this is, if I'm not mistaken, it's a government entity, right? Qantas is not a privately owned airline. And at least in the Indian context, a government entity being so innovative and coming up with something like this, this was really amazing for me. Yeah, so this creativity, I think, continues to play a huge role, especially in tough times. Over to you, Prof. Alkana.
Yeah, so I think just going back to Ujjawal, there were some other examples of success stories from Emamai, which Ujjawal wanted to share. So do you want to take that over, Ujjawal? Is he there?
I think, take for example, Chyawanprash. It's a category which has been existing probably more than 125 years old, right? And was there suddenly, as I said, on 14th April, Narendra Modi tweeted about it, that Chyawanprash, he retweeted, and incidentally, so Ayush Ministry tweeted about Chyawanprash and Kadha and everything else. And we said, hey, great, that is, this category doesn't sell in summer. The factory is closed in February. So it's 6 months, it's shut. Again, it comes back to life only in August. So our factories were shut, no raw material, nothing. And we said, hey, great. That is this Ayush ministry talking about evangelizing how Ayurvedic products like haldi, chawanprash, honey, and all those things, amla, can actually boost immunity. We leveraged it and we said, hey, how do we take it forward and say, so not that we got into chawanprash, we said, hey, kids don't like chawanprash. They don't like the flavor of it. So we created an immunity jelly, right? A chew, so that it has got the benefits of amla, honey, and all that, which gives 2x immunity. So a lot of people have always thought of Ayurveda being slow, not impactful. We did the research and we said, hey, this can give 2x immunity. It can double your immunity. And we got into a format which is consumer friendly, right? So it was a jelly. Now you would say, hey, did we launch it now? No, we launched it 2 years ago. The context was different. It did not do well then, right? It was another confectionery. It was more expensive. Then now in the entire context of immunity, suddenly this product is taken off, and now you will see it in any even in a pharma store close to your house. So I think, as they say, content into context gives meaning. The context has changed. Suddenly you're saying, how do I make it kid friendly? The entire immunity story, the Chawanprash story, a Tulsi story, an Amla story, interesting for kids. And yes, we're also leveraging in the modern format. Say, for example, haldi. Haldi, all of us are aware, but we don't like the taste and all whatever. So we made a haldi drops which has got saffron, cinnamon, black pepper. So it makes it light and nice and tasty. It's like your haldi ka doodh jo raat ko khandi mein peete hain kind of a thing. So we're getting into newer formats, making more user friendly, but with the intensity of immunity that people are talking about. So it's do good in a formats with consumer friendly. I think that is an interesting space we are getting into. And now, someone talked about changing in shopper behavior and talking about e-commerce. We said, hey, we're getting so many products, but the distribution will be a challenge. Distribution takes a year for a new product to get into mass scale. But we said, hey, why don't we launch our own zandocare.com? So consumers can go online and buy all the Zendu range, entire range of products, and get it delivered for free at their doorsteps across India. Right now, the deliveries of the world, the logistics companies have had a huge change in the in helping brands like us to go direct to consumer. So these entire range may not be available yet in your grocer close by, but it is available at the click of the button, which you can get it delivered in 3 days time. So I think these are seeing some huge inflections. So again, a seasonal brand sells only 4 months. Suddenly it's selling all around the year and actually going through a big boom time. Not just here, I think we could see global opportunities for brands like these, right? The entire immunity Ayurveda story can certainly globalize with the science that we are sharing, that how it can actually boost immunity by 2x. So I think this is a few things that companies like us are doing.
Okay, good. So I think this is a good time for us to take a pause and call for questions from our attendees, because part of it was giving them a chance to hear what our experts had to say and how they're managing in these changed circumstances. But if there are any questions, please use the chat box and we'll be happy to answer them. You could let us know if there's anyone specific you want to provide an answer. So I think somebody has asked, are we allowed to ask follow-up questions? You're allowed to ask questions and follow-up questions both.
Well, thanks for confirming that, sir.
Okay. So I'm okay, from Paramjit Singh. Do you feel that direct-to-consumer is a sustainable model for brands post-COVID? I think I'm going to ask Ujjawal to give us a point of view on that. I think direct-to-consumer has been a model that has worked in different ways. If you think of the Avon model, it's very successful. If you think of the Tupperware model, it's very successful. But if you mean a traditional supply chain from the company to the consumer directly, that's still probably a big challenge. So, Ujjwal, do you want to share a point of view?
Yes, I would like to share that. I think you have to say in two, three lenses. One lens is that if I'm creating new categories, distribution is usually a challenge. Now I have solved for the problem of distribution. So I can create niches, small niches. I don't need to launch. Typically in FMCG, you have to be a 20 crore brand to be massively distributed to a bare minimum, and even to go a 1 lakh stores outlets. And you have some 50 lakh outlets in India. So I think that to consumer is giving you an opportunity to pick up niches and go directly to the consumer. Yes, may not be viable because of logistic cost, but look at the beauty that you get. You get transactional data of consumer at a consumer level, at a individual consumer level. You know why he added to the basket, why he did not, what were the comments he has put, what are the things he has read. That is rich information. I think that rich information is going to make the job of consumer research. I think that rich data is residing with you. You don't have to go to an agency to buy that. I don't have to go to an Amazon to do that research. I can do it in-house. I think that's the beauty, not just being available and make it convenient for the consumers, but I think the richness of data, and that richness of data will actually trigger a few more innovations. That rich data will tell us, hey, we need to launch a few more products. This is what people are saying. So direct to consumer is first-hand feedback, first-hand understanding the consumer, really rich.
If I can ask Ujjwal, do you see over time the role of Amazon, Flipkart going down and companies moving more into this?
No, I wouldn't say that, because what Amazon do or Flipkarts do is they aggregate. So I can buy an entire basket of goods. When you're coming to Zandu, you're only buying Zandu 2-3 products, but your shopping list is going to be 20 of them. So I think why brands are getting into it is there is continuity. See, if you remember when the lockdowns were there, even Big Basket wasn't delivering. Right, even Amazons were shut. So you said, hey, we need to have and even retailers did not have stocks. So this is more of a contingency as it started. But now I think we're seeing such rich data, and we are seeing actually a big surge in data, in sales. So just to give an idea, we are at 10x. In 3 months, the sale of this Zandu car, it's on a small base, but 10x. And I don't think we can continue to grow and continue to launch new products in niche categories.
Okay, so there was a question from one of our attendees. This is a question for Sumanta. It says every user is digital today. How true is this in India? And people are finding it difficult to set up online classes, let alone purchase things in the rural areas and tier 2 cities. So is there going to be a strategy we will see from brands to help them do this more easily?
No, so I'll actually answer it in 2 parts. I think the second part, also to add to what Ujjwal was saying, we will see a lot more action. I wanted to add to that point. We'll see a lot more action from brands going direct to consumer. We already see that with Instagram, right? I mean, you see Instagram shopping has really taken off, and a lot of us would have heard the news about Facebook shopping, though they have not opened it up completely in India yet. But it will allow every brand. You don't need to have your own e-com cart. I mean, Facebook is going to offer you an ability to, even if you have a category or if you have 3 products, you can just get online and allow Facebook to sort of, it's as simple as that's where the market is. You can set up your shop inside that busy market. So you will see a lot more of brands going direct to consumer. From the perspective of, is every consumer today or every user today a digital user? I firmly believe it is. They are at some point in time, some way or the other, they are using digital technology, or they are, and the mobile phone has really allowed it to become that, right? I mean, if you see the both digital payments, the growth numbers of digital payments, which again, Prime Minister Modi himself, including the government of India, has made a huge push, plus the use of mobile phones and smartphones, pretty much everywhere. I mean, and I'll quote some numbers. For example, at the start of lockdown, some of the e-com clients of ours, so for example, a Tata Click, etc., they were saying that the kind of traffic they are getting is from tier 1 and tier 2 towns and cities, including some villages. Because now pretty much you can go to any platform and you can start buying. So many of these platforms don't have services in some villages. And I agree with the point that, how will we see brands entering villages or some tier 2 towns and cities where e-com doesn't exist, or maybe the delivery options don't exist? I think we'll start seeing a hybrid model, and I would take bets on Geo there, connecting the Kirana stores to a e-com model. I am for one closely looking at how that model sort of works out, where actually your Kirana store itself becomes a e-com store. There has been in the past, there are still some examples of assisted commerce. There have been companies who set up assisted commerce facilities in places like in villages. I know of a few companies who have set up those and who are running them very successfully. So it's nothing but it's just a storefront, a guy with a mobile phone. The person goes there, asks for what kind of products that they need. The assisted commerce model literally allows you to that consumer can actually buy anything. All that storefront does is it's just assisting that first time user who has come in, who doesn't know how to place an order on their mobile phone, or might not have a smartphone yet, to place that order online and collect the delivery 2 days later when Amazon, etc., comes and delivers. These assisted commerce models for tier 1, tier 2, and even rural areas, I would see a surge happening. And I think Geo will really drive that. I have full faith that's where the bottom of the pyramid unlocking will happen.
In fact,
I will add to that, Sumanta. I'll add to that, Sumanta, when you said Geo. I think I was just checking right now. Geo Mart is a beta version right now. Is an app. I just now saw the downloads. The downloads are 1/4 of what Big Basket is, and you would be surprised to know it's an omni-channel platform where you order online, it gets delivered from the store closest to your place. You would be surprised, they are now bigger than Big Basket, Amazon Pantry, or Grofers. They're the number one. They're still a beta version. The reason is they have now suddenly reached to 200 cities because they had the offline stores, the Reliance Fresh or Reliance Mart. And now with the Big Bazaar integration, you could just have a huge spurge in clicks and click and mortar rather than brick and mortar. I think that is going to actually penetrate digital business quite dramatically because everyone is convinced that digitization is key. Take, for example, right now, FMCG companies are now developing apps where the retailer can himself place an order. Because I want contactless ordering, even the retailer wants contactless ordering, he is now figuring it out himself. Now, WhatsApp is a very easy medium, right? You would have seen so many apps are now moving not just to apps, now moving to WhatsApp, where you can just say 1, 2, 3 things and you can say, okay, order now, and it will say that. So I think voice, as you said, Sumanta, my kids shop on Amazon using voice. Right. Even the OTP is not a more challenge. The UPI has made even digital payments such a proliferated that OTP putting that also is no more challenge because it automatically gets loaded on. I think it's no more a challenge anymore. And if logistics is a challenge, logistics is getting taken care of through to an omni-channel is making it quite economical for people to do that.
Actually, I want to ask one question to Sarang, because, in the traditional world, we used to do research, focus groups, depth interviews, we used to do observation studies. So in this new digital enabled world, how has the research industry coped to the change, managed the change? What kind of technologies are being applied? And how are clients and consumers behaving differently in the market research space?
Okay, so we've been actually... India has been very slow.
Okay.
My company specifically were formed primarily to enable digital work.
Okay.
So we actually started about maybe 7-8 years ago and we've been doing things like online focus groups. We've been doing neuroscience, eye tracking, etc., facial coding for a long time. But to answer your question more specifically, even through the lockdown, we've actually been doing both offline as well as online work. What's happened is the providers, so there are certain people who facilitate the actual group discussion. So someone like Focus Vision or OWL or whatever. So they have certain bells and whistles that you can use to make it easier for the research agency and the client to get exactly what they want. So actually, it's not that tough. It needs a little bit of planning. It's quite different from what it used to be in the good old days when you had, 8 people sitting across, and you could do it in a totally different way.
Right.
You are constrained by the fact that consumers are not that au fait with doing all this on their phone or even on their tablet or even on their computer. But I think in general, it is possible to do a lot of research quite satisfactorily.
Okay.
Wherever you need to do face-to-face, I mean, there are ways of doing it, but things are moving to online in any case. Online in-depth interviews is very, very good. So, for instance, if I'm going to go and try and interview people who live in, a 6 crore apartment, I'm going to do that. But doing it online is very easy,
Yeah.
And it's normally like a hybrid thing. It's a mix of online with telephone, depending on what they want. So it's actually fairly easy. In fact, I had a point just to close out on the previous discussion, which was quite interesting, where we talked of, based on that question which came for us, and we talked of the distribution angle and how manufacturers and marketers are coping with that, and of course how aggregators are coping with that. I think just a few days back, I read about India being cashless in the next 10 years. And I can see that happening because amazing ease with which mobile wallets have kind of penetrated everywhere, whether it's a Google Pay or a Paytm or whatever you have. It's just so easy. I really think that 10 years we will be truly cashless, and that's one end of the story. The other end, of course, is difficult between manufacturers creating distribution and between aggregators. Between the two of them, I'm sure they'll figure out how to get there. But I think that's a really good sign of us evolving, because it's part of that contactless thing. And even things like credit card companies have been very proactive in this. They keep on sending you mail saying, "Did you know that Citibank is?" I mean, I didn't know because until I saw that communique from Citibank that I can actually use it. So I think there's a lot going there. It's silent, okay, but I think 10 years down the line, you will find that we will not be hopefully using too much cash.
Actually, interesting aside to that is that I think Singapore is one of the most non-cash societies, and it's still only 77%. There's 23% of all transactions still take place in cash. So I think obviously the cashless sector will grow. Whether cash will disappear or not remains something to be seen. Sorry, Jishnu, you were about to say something.
Yeah, so there is a question to Ujjawal, which I can see in my chat. I don't know if
okay.
So let me just read it out. So the question to Ujjawal is, how do you get customers to the website during these times when right now they're not aware of the Jandu Care website? Why not go to established e-commerce platform where you get better access to customers? Ujjawal, if you can reply to that.
Yeah, so I think I'll just answer that. I think the consumer, we are actually spending a lot of money on digital. So if you are on Facebook, you will end up seeing on Instagram, you will see the ads of Zandu Care, you will see other things. Now, if you're asking me about why don't I use, I'm also available on Amazon. So it's not that I'm not available on Amazon. right? I'm also available on Flipkart and also available on modern trade formats. It is just that I'm making it. I am educating now shoppers online about immunity products, and I'm saying just click on this and add to cart. So I'm just taking them through my website where they can buy it, or even they want to buy it from Amazon, they can do it. The beauty I get is I get rich data again. And I'll add to Alkana sir. Sir, if you look at the balance sheet of the P&L of Amazon worldwide, they are still yet to break even.
Yeah, on the retail.
Money that they are making is through Amazon marketing services.
Web
Now,
services.
companies like us are right now thinking, should I be spending on Google ads, or should I be putting my money on Amazon because I can add to cart? I show an ad which is contextual, and I ask people to add to cart. I convert my advertising money into sales. The classic the challenge always in advertising has been I know 50% of advertising is waste. I don't know which side, right? And now it is no more. It is very performance marketing thing is actually a boon. So coming back, I said I really see in 5 years' time, Amazons of the world would rule, not the Nielsen's of the world.
In fact, there's one question which has come from one of the attendees, and the question is this: e-commerce platforms are pushing for recurring order baskets, Amazon Pantry, etc. Is this going to help brands maintain their identity, or be prone to substitution, as inventory management will be critical to maintain traction, and these companies will try to bring in their private labels as well? So I'm not sure who's the best qualified to answer that.
I will answer the private labels. I think this is a huge thing. A lot of people keep talking about. People want to go for more cheaper products. That's not true. People want trusted brands. So if you recently, I was looking. I had a chat with the CEO of DMart, and he makes a very interesting point. He says, "I want trusted brands. The velocity of private labels is low. Your velocity is much higher. So even if your margins are lower, my return on investment is much higher on trusted brands." And the entire thing that the pandemic has shown us is people are going to trusted brands. They don't want to try out untrusted brands. That's the reason I said 140 sanitizers is launched, but probably in 3 months' time, probably only 5 will survive.
Yeah.
I think if I add something to that,
sure.
Part of some of the slides which I had actually prepared to share, but it's absolutely true. In the old days, in the pre-COVID days, there was this tendency to have a conventional value for money paradigm in our heads, all right? And which meant that you want the cheapest alternative, as long as it's not that cheap that the product won't work at all or is harmful to you, etc. But today, it's this obsession with, I think you used some nice word related to viral, I forget what it is, but this obsession with health has one of the behavioral changes that a lot of marketing pundits have said will stick is the shift to trusted A-class brands. And this is despite the pervasive promiscuity due to enhanced choice. Okay, that's exactly what the question is talking about. Whether it's store brands, whether it's other brands available, because there are brands coming out of the woodwork. It's not going to be that easy. People are going to examine the product, the promise, what the product is made of. They're going to examine the packaging date, etc. But most of all, they're going to look at the brand, and I totally believe that that's going to happen. So, I mean, it's not going to be that easy for store brands to suddenly go out and make a killing.
So I have a point here. I have a point here on brands. What Ujjawal was showing is interesting in the way different brands within their portfolio have tried to branch out. And I think that's an important piece when we talk about the brand, that each brand, and we've learned in our marketing that a brand actually is allowed to do certain things or not allowed to do other things by the consumers. Right. So we have seen some examples, for example, with this washing of hands becoming so important, with sanitizers becoming such a big category, every Tom, Dick and Harry has jumped into making sanitizers. And like Ujjawal said, probably 3 or 4 brands will survive and do well. I think the important thing that many companies miss out is about how well does a sanitizer fit into the brand. And I'll give you one example that I've seen, which is, I was pretty much shocked to see that, which is that Santoor soap, which has been built on a platform of good for skin, soft, gentle. The mother has such soft and young skin that she gets taken for a college girl. They have an ad where they show the person using a Santoor soap to wash his or her hands. And they have created a new logo saying Santoor Germ Shield, which, in my opinion, and I may be wrong, sounds very, very odd, because Santoor does not stand for germ kill, it stands for soft skin. And in my mind, a germ kill soap is harsh, bad for the skin, like that also. A skincare soap is soft and gentle, it cannot also be having an antibacterial ingredient. So I fear that a brand like Santoor, while it may be taking advantage, and maybe it's selling a lot of the soap due to this, but at the end of the COVID, what will be its brand identity? Will it actually have weakened its position? You know, it's done amazingly well over the years with the skincare position. Will it end up weakening it is a question that we'll have to see how it plays out. I think the caution here is for brands to be clear about what they stand for, what is the vision, purpose, what is the footprint of the brand, and to make sure that just because it is opportunistic, you don't get into an area that will backfire on you later on. That was just a point I wanted to make.
Add to that in a lighter vein. During these times, people come onto LinkedIn, and there are some entrepreneurs who come back to me, sir, you're from FMCG background, can you guide us? I said the first thing you need to do is pick up the positioning book. It was launched in 1989. Please read.
It's still relevant.
It's the most relevant thing. Right. That's how you build a brand. Right.
Totally.
So yeah.
My students are sick of me talking of positioning, I think, already.
Correct. I think in every lecture we give, we remind all our students that positioning is one of the most central and core concepts for keeping the brand healthy in the long term. So I think we're more or less at the end of this event, and I just want to thank once again all the people at IIT Ghaziabad who worked tirelessly to make the event possible. Thank you to the panelists for sparing the time. I know we had a lot of discussions in the run-up to this evening's event. It was good interacting with all of you, and thank you to my co-host Jishnu for partnering with me on hosting this event. Look forward to seeing all of you in the future.
Alkana sir, can you show the last slide? It's very evocative. I wouldn't want to miss that.
Yeah, sure.
I think the biggest learning that at least I have had in my career has been on agility. I think this is a classic thing. I think I saw this on LinkedIn some time back. Yeah. An entrepreneur is someone who jumps off the cliff and builds a plane on the way down.
Brilliant.
Very evocative statement. The point is that yes, positioning is very important, but speed, this entire thing has been about speed. We have always heard the early bird catches the worm, but what is more important is you are taking a plunge, you're taking from the gut. I think my learnings have been that straight from the gut. Now people would say, hey, straight from the gut, what about research? I think it's also about deep consumer understanding and then taking a gut call. Not everything is research, because invariably market research is just authentication of your hypothesis. And that's what
Sarang is still on the call, so just be careful.
You're killing his business.
No, I am not. Moving to Zandu immunity boosters was all about deep insight. BoroPlus brand extension. We didn't do a consumer research and understand, hey, what does a brand stand for? We knew what it stands for. It's a 40-year-old brand. Other thing is also about you will not get your target the first time around. You have to be ready. You fire and then you say, hey, this is not working, and then you change your aim. That's the entire story about repositioning of Navratna brand. You saw how it did not work in the summer, and suddenly we changed it to stress, and now we're seeing a growth back. And I think speed. I have worked in companies where a new product actually doesn't take a year, probably 3 years. You do a pilot, you scale it up, you do basis study, spend 1 crore on just basis study. I think I've seen in my last 3 months is, I'll give an example of soaps. I get a call from the marketing guy at 5 o'clock in the evening, says, tomorrow I need to give you soap volumes. I said, hey, I have no clue about the category, but we took some gut calls and we have launched it. And I think speed is very important, but positioning, I think I would go back think what your brand stands for. Until you're true to your brand, all of this will fail. So agility is extremely important. Risk-taking ability. So if I think Emamai, what is it different from my earlier companies is the risk-taking ability, right?
So I think I've seen from FMCG this time I have seen the maximum agility from the entire FMCG category. I think from a Saffola to Emamai.
It's been huge.
It's just been launch after launch, and the way you guys have done it, I think, has been fantastic. It's literally what takes about a year has been shrunk down to a month, and I have seen launches happen.
Actually, Sumanta, I'm beginning to think that the inside story will turn out to be that many of these launches were always ready, and it's just that there wasn't a black swan event to get them out of the door. And this pandemic has proved to be the trigger point for people finally acting rather than doing the next round of discussion and debate.
I think, a lot of us have worked in both MNCs and Indian companies, Ujjawal included. So the topic for another discussion is, MNCs, in my opinion, have lost out badly, at least in India. All the examples, Sumanta, you also talked about, have been Indian companies.
Indian companies, yeah.
And having worked for many, many years in an MNC, we know how convoluted the decision-making process there is. And Ujjawal mentioned that a new product takes 3 years to come out. So I think if MNCs in this new world, especially in emerging markets, want to do well, they will have to unlearn and adopt new ways of doing business. But then I think that is a topic for totally another webinar.
I'll just add to that point. I think MNCs want to de-risk, hence they want to take templates. They will say this worked in Thailand, let's make it work in India.
Correct.
Right? So it is about de-risking, but the Indian entrepreneurs are about taking risks and creating something. I think the joy they get out of creating something is far more infinite than even just creating top lines or creating market caps.
Okay, good. So on that happy note, I'll say thank you to all of you guys, and maybe we'll meet on the internet for a beer in the near future.
Thanks for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for your time. It was great fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks to all the attendees. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's still a lot of you here. Okay, good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night.